Oh, hello and welcome, my lovely psychology students. Welcome to a quick introductory session that looks at just some of the key basic concepts that you will find in the start of this module memory. But let's start off with a very basic definition of what is memory. Memory is the mental process of retaining information for some time after it was learned. It allows us to process, store, and retrieve information. So let's look at the first sentence. Memory is a mental process. So that should automatically think, oh, it links to the cognitive approach. Because remember, the cognitive approach says it is our mental processes that influence our behavior. So it's about retaining information. So that means there's going to be certain time period or time restrictions when it comes to memory. And it's focusing on what we've learned. So here we can actually hear it's quite a complex process because it allows us to process the information that we're dealing with in the present and to store that information. And once we stored that information, to be able to recall it back through a retrieval process. So memory is a very complex process. But right now, we just want to understand some of the basic concepts that will start to help you when we start covering this module. So let's start off with the three types of memory stores. We have a sensory store, also known as the sensory register, the short-term memory, and the long-term memory. Now, I have a little task for you. I'm going to give you three options. See if you can work out which description belongs to what type of memory store. So here they are. I'd like you to pause the video now and see if you can work out which one belongs to which memory store. Over to you. Remember to pause. Great, I'm glad you've paused. Let's see how you've done. So let's start with the sensory store or the sensory register. And that would be a temporary memory store that stores information in various modalities, and we are completely unaware of this information. So our sensory register is our memory that registers all of the information that is around us, all the information. And this is where it links to the various modalities. So that means different types of information. And actually, these modalities are linked to our senses. So our sensory register, that's why it's called the sensory register, because it's registering everything that our senses are picking up, but we're totally unaware. If we were aware, it would just be information overload. So it's a very temporary store. So that means the information doesn't stay in there for very long, but it comes in all shapes or forms. So everything that we process from our touch, our taste, our smell, our sight, our hearing, everything that is happening around us. Now, say for example, I said to you, stroke your hair, right? Or, move your arms. Can you feel your shirt or your jumper on your skin? Now, your sensory register would have been picking up if you were stroking your hair, what your hair felt like. It would feel the movement of the cloth on your arm, but you were unaware of those until you paid attention, till I drew your attention to it. And you know what happened? That was the information transferring from the sensory store into the short-term memory. And the short-term memory is a temporary memory store which holds information that is being processed in the present. So information that we pay attention to will then move from the sensory register into the short-term memory. And the short-term memory is the memory store that deals with the here and the now, the present. So it's allowing us to process information that we've paid attention to in the here and the now. Have you ever, you've been in school or you're out and about, and then all of a sudden, one of your schoolmates kind of gives you a dead arm. Ah, And you can think, what did you do that versus, oh, you walked right past me and you didn't say hello. And you go, I didn't see you. I promise I didn't see you. And they don't believe you. Well, actually, it's true. You didn't see them. Your sensory register would have picked them up. But because your attention was directed elsewhere, you wouldn't have seen them. I mean, that's happened to me before. I mean, I've walked past my mum and kind of thinking, where is my mum? Right? Because I'm busy looking for her. But because I'm, directing my attention elsewhere, I can actually walk right past her. So it's the short-term memory that allows you to be in the here and the now. Work with the information that you've paid attention to. Now, it's a temporary store. So that means information in there doesn't stay in there very long, and it can only hold so much information. But we'll be looking at duration and capacity a little bit later. Our final store is a permanent memory store that stores information that has been mentally processed and stored. So our long-term memory is the permanent storage place for our memories. But it's only a permanent storage for the memories that have been clearly processed in a certain way that allows them to be stored. Because not every memory that we have in our short-term memory will move into our long-term memory. It needs to be processed in certain ways to enable it to be stored. So from this, you can clearly see that we have different types of memory store. Sensory store or sensory register, short-term memory, and long-term memory. So you have a basic idea of just what they're about. Now let's look at 3 characteristics and also 3 key terms that you need to know what they mean. Now, each of these memory stores will have the same 3 characteristics that we're going to look at, but they're going to differ. And these are capacity, duration, and coding. Coding can also be referred to as encoding. So we need to understand what they are and also realize that these characteristics are going to be different for each memory store. So let's define these key characteristics. Capacity means, and I know you know what capacity means. Capacity means how much information a memory store can hold. So it's the amount of information that can be held by a particular memory store. And it is going to be different for the sensory register, short-term memory, and long-term memory. Our next key characteristic is duration. Now, duration means the length of time. See, capacity and duration are quite different. Capacity is the amount. Duration is the length of time information can stay in a particular memory store. And again, the duration of memories are going to be different in the sensory store, the short-term memory, and the long-term memory. And our final characteristics is coding or encoding. Remember, both of these terms are fine. Coding means it is the format in which the information must be in order for it to be processed within that memory store. So that means each of the memory stores are going to have different types of coding. Again, let's just go over coding again. It is the format in which the information must be. Now remember, when we were defining the sensory register, that it's made up of a variety of modalities. That means a variety of different types of coding, different types of format. And like I said, our senses, smells, taste. So that information is coming through in different formats in order for that memory store to be able to process that information. Right, my lovelies. Hopefully, this will just give you a little bit of insight into some of the key concepts that we're going to be focusing on in our first session in memory. Till next time, take care. Be back with you soon.